This video is brought to you by me, because I finally launched a channel. Are you happy, everyone? I listened, okay? Chef is a 2014 film about a chef. He gets a bad review on a meal he serves, and he's infuriated by this, so he decides to pack up his career into a food truck and go serve the food he wants to customers that he loves. He finds success and earns a happiness that he didn't have before. A lot of people take this movie as an expression of artistic frustration, how the industries that make art can stifle your creative voice because they're all greedy and money-grubbing culture vultures, and perhaps an artist should do what they do for the love of it, not for prestige or fortune. And that's mostly true. There's a lot of autobiographical elements to this story. But what people don't realize about this movie is that it's not just about the struggles of an artist. It's about a specific struggle. Chef is specifically about the production of Marvel's Iron Man 2. This is a film about Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is a director and actor known for making the biggest productions for Disney they've ever undertaken. He's also my dad. He runs The Mandalorian, directed the live-action Jungle Book and Lion King, which were both in the top 5 highest-grossing films of the year, only to be beaten out by the very company who hired him to make them. And of course, he has served as an executive producer on every single Avengers film, the final one being the biggest movie of all time. Avatar doesn't count, fuck you. He is one of, if not the most financially and creatively successful filmmakers working today. But unlike most LA rich kids, Jon Favreau was not born into this position in Hollywood. He got his start as a small-time actor and then worked his way up to directing made-for-TV movies. His big break came when he wrote the screenplay to the comedy film Swingers, a mostly allegorical film about a young actor struggling to make money. The film was a hit and allowed Jon to continue directing bigger and bigger movies, including the greatest Christmas film of all time. But the moment that set him on the path to become who he is today was when Kevin Feige called him. In 2006, Jon Favreau was tasked by the newly formed independent film company Marvel Studios to create Iron Man, the first in a cinematic universe funded entirely by a comic book company with the distant hopes of creating a long line of films that brought their characters to life. But because they were smart and knew they couldn't just launch right into a cinematic universe, they knew they first had to make one good film, and they needed someone they trusted in order to do it. Iron Man was successful enough to spawn a sequel, which received mixed reviews and criticism for pretty much recycling the formula of the first movie. However, it made enough money to make their big team-up movie, and then another sequel, and then another team-up, eventually leading to a total domination of the international box office, earning over $15 billion in ticket sales alone. Favreau is a key piece of this million-dollar business plan, and he alone started the cultural juggernaut we know today, creating the style and characteristics that we all now know to be Marvel. However, things were not always peachy and fun. There were some rough patches, as anyone who has any kind of career goes through. When looking into the behind the scenes, Iron Man 2 was supposed to be much more ambitious and dark than it ended up being. Rumors began spreading about creative differences between Marvel and Favreau's team of actors and writers. The fallout from this may have led to Jon Favreau not directing The Avengers, which was apparently the original plan. After Iron Man 2 was released and the follow-up The Avengers made over $1 billion, Favreau did not come back for the third film. Instead, he made Chef, an almost entirely allegorical account of what happened at Marvel and while making Iron Man 2, something which he's never talked about publicly. Because these rumors have never been confirmed, all we can do is look at this movie for an account of what actually happened, and more importantly, how he feels about it, which makes for a really interesting viewing experience while you're taking into account all the context surrounding it. While keeping this in the back of your mind, pay close attention to what happens in Chef. Chef opens with Cardi B's I Like It Like That. Just kidding. Chef opens with a lively drum score, over scenes of the chef preparing his kitchen. This is Carl Casper. He's methodical and efficient, but throwing all of his energy into what he's doing. We can see through his body language he's entirely focused. In this shot, he looks away for a second, and then we pan down and see he's been cutting perfect slices while paying attention to other things. He's a professional. The food is shot with beautiful natural light and close angles and low depth of field, presenting it to us on a silver platter. We can see through the visual language that his food is good, and he loves making it. One of his employees enters with a giant pig, and he goes to work preparing it with his team member. One could say he's the director of his kitchen. Casper realizes he's late picking up his son from school, so he goes to get him. We can see that he's a little distant from his son, who lives with Casper's ex. He's distracting him from his work, so he's forced to be disaffected and strict with him. When you have a career in something you're passionate about, it's hard to direct your energies to anything outside of your workplace. The single-minded ambition that it takes to be successful can create a disconnect from your closest friends and family members. But when they do get a chance to talk, they have a really strong bond. He's very direct with his son and talks to him like he does with his coworkers, except with much less cussing. Casper has to get back to the kitchen because a food critic is coming. His work is going to be judged tonight, so he's putting a lot of pressure on himself. The idea of a critic is theoretically a useful one. A smart person shares their experience with the art that you've made and tell people whether they thought it was good or not. They speak with authority and are trusted to have good taste and good opinions. And these views can have the potential to play a huge part in the financial success of the art. But a critic doesn't get to see what went into a product. They only see how it turned out. They can never know the true struggle of creating it, and that creates a naturally misinformed view. After all, is saying something about a work more valuable than the art itself? Something, Ratatouille. Either way, this critic has the power to give Casper a bad name, and Casper is going to pull out all the stops to try and impress him. So he creates a new menu, full of style and pizzazz, trying to be as creative as possible, and his team is so on board. We're on board because we've seen how hard he works and trust that his choices will be exciting and memorable. But Kevin Feige, the owner, has other plans. He says to Casper, "This is my restaurant. You are creating because I am letting you. Forget your fresh and exciting new ideas. Don't surprise anyone. Give the people and the critic exactly what they've had before. It worked last time. It's gonna work again. I'm Dustin Hoffman." And after arguing about it for a while, Casper eventually relents. An important detail is that he wasn't told what to do. In the end, the decision was up to him, and he decides to play it safe. Whenever you're in a creative field and a bad idea sneaks its way into the final product, the fault isn't just on that one person who had that bad idea, it's also on everyone who let it happen. Artists typically have to fight for their creative ideas against the companies paying them to make things. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and that sucks. But if you don't fight at all, that's on you. Casper tells his crew his decision to scrap his creative menu and serve his most popular dishes, and everyone on the team is clearly crushed. They were so on board for his exciting new ideas and know that this is not the right decision, but they trust him. He's their leader, and while they can voice their objections, they instead follow him. They have his back. After this scene, we cut to a dancing skeleton, a puppet on strings singing. We cut to the hands controlling him, then back to the puppet racking focus to Casper. The puppet then dips to its hands and knees, crawling like a dog. This is obviously how Casper sees himself right now. The team goes to the bar and then reads the big review, which is titled "Eager to Please." The entire team slowly hears the review divulge into severe disappointment and harsh criticism. It's not just Casper who's upset, it's everyone who had his back. Then he smokes weed with Scarlett Johansson, one of the actors he worked with closely on Iron Man 2, one of his real-life team members. He tries to kiss her, and it's hard to watch because I always cringe every time a male writer-director stars in his own movie with a gorgeous actress as his love interest. And he has two in this movie, but they don't actually kiss. He goes back to his apartment and cooks for her. He releases some of his creative tension by creating something, basking in the art he loves to make, and oh my god, it looks so good. Fuck. He finds out he's been given 2 stars. Not a bad rating, but he's insulted. Not just because of the number, but his disappointment in himself, and the disaffected way the critic wrote him off as a hack. He takes his son out to a theme park where we see he's riding a roller coaster. Now this shot lasts for like 2 seconds, but it's really funny. He's just sitting on a roller coaster, not enjoying it, just looking at his phone. Hollywood is full of glamour and fans constantly celebrating you, but the people on those red carpets may have had a really rough time behind the scenes, not fully believing in what they made. But what are you gonna say? I hated this. No, you're a professional. You want to respect your peers, especially when it isn't entirely their fault that you ended up making something you didn't like. Images like this put me into his mindset as to why he would not talk about it and instead maybe make a film expressing his feelings about it. Now by this point, you might think that I'm reading a little too much into this, but in the very next shot, it all but confirms this film is about Iron Man 2. They go to the cinema, and what do we hear? The iconic sound effect of Iron Man. This isn't just a fun little Easter egg for his fans, this is a really evocative image. The director of this film watching his last film and not really enjoying it. This could also function as a meta symbolism of Casper reflecting on the meal he served the critic, or it could literally just be how Jon Favreau felt at the premiere of Iron Man 2 watching it for the first time with an audience. There's a lot in this image, and I've never seen anything quite like it. Casper comes up with some new ideas in his kitchen and shares them with his staff. He eventually finds out that the critic's review has now gone viral on Twitter and gets his son to make an account for him.
So is this for sex?
Ew.
That night, he reads everything people have been saying about him and he tweets a provocative clapback. The Twitter beef goes viral and he decides to invite the critic back to his restaurant to serve him the creative menu he never got to show him. We get another scene where the son wants to spend time with him, but Casper is again too driven and too focused. His son is disappointed. Casper goes back to the kitchen and everyone is so hyped. They're so excited to make this new menu. The restaurant is packed because now he's Twitter famous and he's super gassed up to prove how good he is. Guns blazing. We're doing it my way this time. Full creativity. Carl is so happy that he says it out loud for us.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm finally happy. I'm happy, okay?
And then...
Carl, we're staying with the same menu, right?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Yeah, we get another rehash of the same argument, but this time he's not given a choice. He's going to be forced to make what the owner wants, and if he doesn't, he's got to leave the kitchen. And he does. Casper says, fuck this, I'm leaving. His best guy is so loyal, he wants to follow him out, but Casper tells him to stay. He goes home and cooks more delicious food out of frustration. We get a montage of every course of the meal and the critic eating it and being disgusted, the owner trying to suck up to him, and the waitress unable to explain why he's getting the same thing yet again. The critic tweets another insult, and then Casper loses his shit. And finally, we reach the most entertaining scene of the film. Casper storms into the restaurant in his t-shirt and completely unloads on the guy. An explosive, biting monologue from a brittle spirit trying to prove it's invincible. He explains to the critic how he doesn't even understand how to cook the food he's criticizing. And And he full on fists the lava cake and explains how wrong he is about it. And then, surprisingly, it's not just about him. He's not defending his food. He's defending the food his staff made. Every single person in his kitchen who busted their asses to give him a good meal. Not only his staff, but even his boss.
He thought you were gonna close his fucking restaurant down!
This was never about his boss. It was always about the critic. People not understanding how good he was because of his creative limitations. Casper eventually decides to start a food truck, and then the last half of the movie plays out in a beautiful sequence of wonderful cooking montages and a success story of a small business. It's really wonderful. Casper finds a new happiness doing small-time gigs for a very connected audience in a community that loves him for what he does. He rekindles his relationship with his son and learns to truly pay attention to him and how smart he is, how much he's been neglecting him. And he reconnects with his wife, having solved the issue that plagued their marriage from the beginning. The film ends with Casper, happy in his food truck, finally moved on from where he was, in a position to work as hard as he can without any of the limitations, and being able to spend time with the most important people in his life. The end. We even get a cameo from Princess Carolyn herself playing his publicist.
And they're all getting picked up, and the picked up headlines are getting picked up by each other.
And of course, the man, the myth, the Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., who plays Casper's ex-wife's ex-husband, who is a rich asshole who sells the food truck to Casper, which is a clear metaphor for John only being able to make this film because of all the money he made in Iron Man 2. So what does all this mean? What there's allegory here, but what is it all coalescing to tell us about John's experience? To answer that question, we gotta ask another one. Why food? See, Dad is not just a filmmaker. He loves cooking. It's a deep passion of his, as we can see in some of the behind the scenes footage. I'd wager to guess it's one of the art mediums that he feels the most free doing. No one is telling him what to do. Every decision is up to him, and he doesn't have to wait around for everyone to accomplish his goals in the moment. Chef is chock full of food montages. Some would say too many, but they serve as an important metaphor for what the film is. It's the food truck. The food truck represents this film, Chef. After Iron Man 2 wrapped up, Favreau took all of his pent-up creative energy he was stifling for 2 years and went out to express himself in the best ways he can, food and film, using autobiographical storytelling and blending it with the secret sauce that makes this movie so beloved, wish fulfillment. After getting mixed reviews for Iron Man 2, Favreau did not in real life tweet insults at the critics and stormed into their offices and fingering molten lava cake before throwing it at them. But things that didn't happen in real life can still be revealing in allegorical stories. Wish fulfillment is often looked down upon in storytelling, but it can provide just as much honesty to a film as real life events do. What a person wants tells us a lot about them. Maybe Jon Favreau wishes he did say something to his critics. Maybe he wishes he packed it all up out of Hollywood and started producing independent movies. That isn't what ended up happening for Favreau, but these desires inform the passion and love baked into this movie. It makes for more dynamic scenes and it expresses a deeper truth behind the real life scenarios that this film is depicting. The fact that the self-insert character does kick and shout and scream and wail like a baby about the things that were bothering him, but it's not framed as the thing that he should have done, shows that he knows that. Shows that he's glad he didn't end up doing these things. So what we're left with is an exploration of those feelings and how they can impact us. Perhaps Favreau in real life blames himself for not pushing hard enough for his more ambitious ideas for Iron Man 2. We get a fun scene and we also get to sit back and be like, thank God he didn't do this in real life. What's extremely important here is that his employer isn't being painted as a bad person. This isn't his fault. It was the failure of Casper to fully commit to what he believed in. Chef is a film about Jon Favreau's experience making the film he didn't necessarily want to make. Allegory is never entirely sequential or literal. These pivotal sequences could have been about Jon Favreau not returning for Iron Man 3, or quitting the Avengers, or just an elongated exaggeration about Iron Man 2. Either way, this film frames the emotional frustration of an artist who was given limitations and then criticized for it. In the end, it's up to the leader of a project to stand up for his ideas, and regardless if he gets to do them, stand up for his team who worked hard on the final product.
I really hope that they like what we did here. I do. I'm really happy with the way it came out.
Films are so complicated to make, and we all sit back and critique it saying, well, I wouldn't have done that. That doesn't track. When in reality, no one knows how better a film functions than the people who created it. The people who were either forced to make decisions or trusted their guts because of their experience. And in the end, our shitty tweets do get to them.
You're not getting to me!
Okay.
You're not getting to me!
Okay, Carl.
He's not getting to me!
By sharing his perspective, Favreau's given me a lot to think about when I go see something. I don't know what happened in that kitchen. I wasn't there. I've never directed a blockbuster feature film. Maybe instead of criticizing the artists, we can understand that they are part of a large system that most of the time doesn't give a fuck about making something good. They're making money, and these artists are just trying to make something good along the way. Favreau did not end up creating independent films forever. He's back at Disney and now makes some of the highest earning big budget films in the industry. Maybe he's at peace with where he's at. Maybe he's learned to accept the system and work the kitchen as well as he can. He certainly looks happy. Anyways, we do videos here all the time, don't we, Mason?
We sure do, and I've been here the whole time.
But friends, I have finally buckled down to the pressure. I'm making my own channel. It's called Ben from Canada, and I have a video on Tenet there right now. The link is on screen right here, right there. You see it? I pointed an arrow to it. If you don't click it, Caravan of Garbage is canceled. I'm sorry I yelled at you guys. I didn't really mean it. I just, it's just a hard job sometimes. It's really frustrating being on YouTube, and have a good day. Don't worry about it.